That's my best horn. I don't have a horn, but I think we need to, sound the horn as the Vikings are going through a brand new transition as their good old cousin is no longer with us. He's not dead, he's just moved to Atlanta to be a dirty bird than a purple people eater Viking like we all love to be. And the Vikings, once again, like many teams, are on the quest to finally, some way, get to a Super Bowl and win it. And once again, we are back asking the question, the Vikings, why? Why we are here again? So, hey everybody, I'm Cortez, and I'm a critic, and we're talking about the Minnesota Vikings today. The Minnesota Vikings, a team that I feel like has underachieved is being nice. I just feel like they're the team that when they're successful, you're thinking, wow, look what they have, and then when they're not, you're thinking, well, that's typical Vikings. They get close, and then for whatever reason, they don't execute, they don't achieve. But they're always a team that you feel like, man, they have talent, they have charisma, they have a sweet ass uniform, just I don't know, they always just feel like they're always playing second fiddle in their own division every year. And when they're successful, like a few years back, we view them as fake. And then they lose to the Giants, and then it's kind of like, yeah. And we just keep thinking, okay, something drastic has to happen. We gotta have a change. We gotta make moves. And then Kirk Cousins tore his ACL, and I guess that was the signal. Kirk Cousins tore his Achilles. The season is in jeopardy. I think that should be a call to arm that we need to change. And I guess the Vikings got their hands forced because at the time of this recording, Kirk Cousins is now a Falcon. And I think we all are hearing rumors that they're going to get a quarterback in the draft. The big name I keep hearing is J.J. McCarthy from Michigan. And how funny enough that they will get a quarterback from the good old Michigan, Detroit area to help them become competitors against Detroit. What a funny world we live in. Now, the Vikings, before Kirk Cousins' injury, I had them at a 9-win season. I thought the Lions were going to run away with this division, which they did. I thought Green Bay was going to go through some growing pains. And Chicago, I was feeling that they were probably not going to surpass. I really thought it was a three-man race. And the question was going to be which of these three teams were going to make the division title, or the rest were just going to make wild cards. Now, when Kirk Cousins got hurt, of course, that derailed the entire narrative of the Vikings, even though there were some moments of promise and there were some moments of interesting. That is, wow, they are still in it. And they did have a very unique string of wins in the middle of the season and then a new quarterback situation. But like most fairy tales, eventually the story comes to an end and we have to close the book. And once that book closed, the fairy tale ends. So going from 9-8 to 7-10, I can't help but feel like Kirk Cousins' injury probably did derail a lot of it, since Kirk Cousins was literally lost by the midway point of the season, very similar to Joe Burrow. So it's really hard for him to look at this and be like, wow, you guys were playing so well, you got hurt, and then it's gone. Really emphasize that this year was a lot of backup quarterbacks trying to save teams from inevitably just calling this season a bust and just trying to see what player they can keep, who can stay healthy, and moving on. I feel like that's the sad thing of the NFL last year dictates is that backup quarterback was as valuable as the starting quarterback, but then of course it comes to money and what can you rely on. Good coaching can help that. Sometimes mediocre coaching cannot. Your best game for Minnesota. Now this one was kind of interesting because, like I said, Kirk Cousins got hurt, so it's really hard for me to look at something and say, well, that's clearly the best game because Kirk Cousins was there, so it makes the narrative push. But if Kirk Cousins not there, then it's hard for me to say, yeah. And I'm kind of flirting back and forth, potentially changing my idea for who is considered, the best game and the worst game for it. One, I have a game here that was done with Kirk Cousins was the starting quarterback at the time, and the team they beat was formidable. So I can see him pushing that narrative. But just the narrative of the other best game they had, where he wasn't playing, and the opponent they did play, and the expectation behind it was insurmountable, that when they came to win it, it became more of a shocker that they won it with that quarterback than they did with Kirk Cousins. So I'm kind of flipping on here, because the best game I would want to view it as the best of everyone playing, but the Vikings have a very unique narrative of their best game that I can dictate. But I'm gonna go with my initial premise, and I'm gonna go their best game took place in Week 7 versus the San Francisco 49ers. Kirk Cousins was playing the game, and I have to go with the Vikings at the full strength to dictate more of their best game. That's when they had the full strength going at it, and then against the 49er team that, yes, they were in the start of their 3-game slump, and this was potentially, hopefully, their hope to bounce back, but the Vikings says, nah, we're still going to beat you and continue your losing streak. Continue. 22-17 was the final score, but if you look at the quarterbacks, Kirk Cousins threw for nearly 400 yards in that game. Addison, the rookie out of USC, had a phenomenal 123 yards receiving, and 2 touchdowns. Brock Purdy didn't play bad. He threw for 272 yards, touchdown, and 2 interceptions. But to me, it felt more that, was the dilemma of the 49ers dwindling, or was it the Vikings showcasing their confidence they could win? And beating San Francisco, yes, they were at home, and the Vikings really wanted this home game. Like I said, this is probably the last game of Kirk Cousins before he got injured, eventually replaced by Joshua Dobbs and company. And like I said, the other game I was considering was the Vikings versus New Orleans with Joshua Dobbs, because no one expected it. But I feel like that would be kind of like not giving the credit to what the Vikings could have been with Kirk Cousins. They beat the 49ers, and even though the Vikings were struggling below 500 at the time of this game, it was that moment of, okay, the Vikings competed with the 49ers, who's considered the best team in the NFC. There's brightness in their future for them. So I change in the middle of this recording to put the 49er game versus the Saints game, because Kirk Cousins was a starting quarterback while Joshua Dobbs was a starting quarterback for the Vikings. And I like to give consistency with some of my picks of best and worst games by giving the credit to the Vikings for what they did against a 49er team that was considered one of the better defense in the NFC, and a much more favorable team to win in the NFC and go to the Super Bowl, maybe even win it. So definitely for the Vikings to pretty much put up and shut up the 49ers seems to be the most appropriate. So to me, this was the Viking game that should have made Viking fans feel like, okay, we may have started weak, may have started flippy-floppy, barely 500, but look what we did with San Francisco. That should give us confidence against the NFC that's clearly, Lion focus, and Green Bay is somewhere there. Maybe they're not scary yet, but we can still make some noise. Now, your worst game, similar to how I'm feeling about when I make these picks of worst games, because you want to look at Kirk Cousins. He wasn't playing some of these games, so you kind of want to look at that. But I don't do the first 4 weeks. And the first 4 weeks were against Tampa, Philadelphia, and Los Angeles Chargers. And they can say those words, but I don't like to use the first 4. We're going to take those out. And the Chiefs game, I really can't call it the worst game. It's the Chiefs. So I'm not going to give that as a worst game. It's the Chiefs. Very few teams can beat the Chiefs, so it's not like they played. So, and after that, the Vikings went on a win streak. And then Kirk Cousins got hurt. And they kept winning. And then eventually started losing out. So what is the worst game with Kirk Cousins? I can't do it, so changing my approach. To me, the worst game is Week 11 at Denver. Yes, Joshua Dobbs was the quarterback at the time of that game, but the big thing is that, did we really think Russell Wilson and the Denver Broncos were better than the Vikings? Yes, Kirk Cousins was leading a consistent win streak for about a month, and then Joshua Dobbs comes in, and they still kept the streak going. So there were thoughts that Denver, a team that was clearly on the decline, and the confidence was already being shown lacking, that they were a wounded animal that we could say, oh, we can steal another win here. Heck, we can beat the Broncos, and then we have Chicago, another team that's on the decline, Las Vegas, like there were moments here that I think, I mean, they don't play Detroit until the last quarter of the season. They play them twice in 3 weeks. So there was hope that the Vikings could probably steal 2 or 3 more wins. And who knows, they could have been in the playoff with Joshua Dobbs at the quarterback. But at 21-20, losing by one is painful to me in football than any other sports, because most likely you win or lose by 1 point more consistently in baseball, hockey, and basketball at times. But losing by 1 point, especially when you score 3, 6, 7s, and even 2, so losing by 1 point just feels like, man, you missed something somewhere from that extra point, or that field goal went for 2 field goals, so that touchdown. Like, there's a lot of missed opportunity when everyone scores in big bunches. But also, Denver outscored Minnesota 12-3 in the fourth quarter. Just another slip away. You had control, you had focus, and it just slipped out of your hand. It just slipped out. We couldn't stop the Broncos in the last moment. Just you need one stop just to secure it, just to get ourselves that over that just one stop, just something. And I think that was probably the start of, okay, maybe the Joshua Dobbs hype train is coming to an end, and maybe we need to accept that we need a different approach. But also, you could probably argue that the Chicago game was worse because it was a division foe, and the score was way shorter, 12-10. Now, we all know that was a turnover-happy game, so that could be another argument for worst game. So, as you can see in this video, I have 2 good games with both different point of views to dictate, and same with bad games. Both were bad, but one had a little bit more of a ooh, and then one had more like a So, yeah, and point out they're all roughly right next to each other at the time of this recording. So, but I think the Denver game was probably a little bit worse because the 12-3 fourth quarter out was probably the part where I just felt like, man, you give up 12 points. If you get outscored by that much, by nearly 10 points in one quarter, I always feel like that's kind of bad, especially in the fourth quarter when most of the game was like, okay, we figured out who they are, and then the fourth quarter we should just, end it out, and then you get outscored by that, and you're like, and we lost. Balls, I say. Your MVP, after all this negativity and inconsistency in quarterback play, who is your MVP? It's not going to be a really big surprise. I'm just trying to pull up my stats here. Here we go. Even though he is going through a lot, I'm giving it to Justin Jefferson. The wide receiver went through multiple quarterback chain, and he still had 1,000 yards. Yes, he did not have the receptions compared to his other teammate in T.J. Hawkinson, who had 95 receptions and just under 1,000 yards. But Justin Jefferson, who played in 10 games, had 1,000 yards. While TJ only played in 15, Jefferson played in 10. There were 7 games there. Who knows what he could have done with 7 more? For all intents, he probably could have had 700 yards more added onto it, maybe even more. Maybe he could have been closer to pushing to a 2,000. Maybe. But with less, and need so much in less time, that I just have to give Jefferson the nod on that one. And yes, with the talks of will he be gone, will he know? I think he's going to stay. But Jefferson, to me, is the MVP. He's the best receiver in his class. He's the best receiver in his division. And very much like a lot of receivers. I know a lot of receivers lately, I noticed. But the quarterback play had not been consistent, and they still show out to become Pro Bowl caliber, most feared receiver by most defenses, week after week. So I had to give Justin Jefferson for the less he has done, but the impact he has. So Jefferson is your Viking MVP. The grade for the Vikings, I'm going to give it a C for Cousin. Cousin got hurt. You start the season off 1-3, so that didn't help out too much. And then towards the end of it, I guess consequences of no Cousin. You losing games to Denver and Chicago, and team probably should have beaten. Even the game against the Raiders, you won 3-0. That's nothing to be like, yay, about. So I'll give you guys a C. I can see a D, but I just feel like I think a D is a little bit too severe. I mean, there were some bright spots there that If it's a C, it's a low C, like maybe a point away from a D, if I can be generous there. But yeah. So that's the Vikings. Sorry, this video went a little longer than I anticipated. So we're going down to the 2 playoff teams. We talk about the team that was the most surprised, or a team that we the most were unsurprised. And let's go with the most unsurprised. And let's save the best for last in this one because there's a YouTuber I want to impress. So next we'll talk about the Detroit Lions, and they're so close to going to a Super Bowl season. And let's see, this is hopefully not a Jacksonville Jaguar, and it's a one-time never again. So until next time, I'm Cortez, and I'm a critic. Thank you very much for watching.